Ray, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
All right, yo, let's get into it.
Try to take over the world.
Preaching freedom.
Try to take over the world.
And greatest chaplain in the world, Mr.
Try
Lance
to
O'Neill.
take over the world.
Yo, what up, everybody? It is Sunday, and oh my God, it is Sunday, and we are here live.
We survived.
Yeah, we survived. We survived the tsunami that was election night. My God, do we have a show for you tonight? I am still in shock. Well, no, I'm not in shock. I'll take that back. I have some words, and I am going to be very careful with my phrasing. But I'm excited. I've been very careful with my social media post. I wanted to take some time first to reflect, and then two, I wanted to save everything so that I am, putting out my thoughts for the podcast and not put them out on social media. So I'm excited. Chappie, how you doing, man? Congratulations, your candidate won. First and foremost, it was a resounding referendum on the country. I knew Trump was. I felt that Trump had a pretty good chance of winning. Matter of fact, I even went back to our election prediction episode where I kind of predicted, Trump winning in a landslide. But what surprised me was the underballot races, and we'll get into a little bit of that. But just how are you feeling? What's your initial thoughts?
Well, my initial thought is I'm frustrated as all get out because I had requested my ballot to be able to vote from Texas, and I wasn't able to vote because when Hurricane Helene hit, it delayed my mail by over 2 weeks. So by the time I got the paper to request it was past time. So I still sent the request in and I never got it. So that was frustrating to me. Positive side, in Texas, it wouldn't have mattered just in terms of I would have canceled your vote out. But but the second thing is, let's just be really clear. He wasn't my candidate. He's who I would have voted for. He would not have been my first choice. He would not have been my fifth choice. I think there were a lot of people that I would have voted for more than him. That said, I'm not sure I could think of a lot of people that I would have voted for Harris in front of. I was definitely not a Harris fan, more so because of her. So let's talk about something here for a minute. So KJ, when you and I were talking, and I don't remember, I think it was on election night, you were saying you were worried about not Trump so much as the people around him and who he'd fill his cabinet with, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was worried about, so not, you weren't looking at the primary effects. You were looking at the secondary and tertiary, basically, effects of him being elected.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so for me, I think my concern is that I believe that Harris was doing what candidates do. She was running to the middle. She was running away from who she really is and who she really believes, what she really believes. And the funny thing about that is how often she would say, well, yeah, I mean, I've kind of changed my policies, but I haven't changed what I actually believe. And so that to me was a giant red flag because I do believe that the background of her dad and how she was raised and her dad, and I know we're just, again, this is me, this is not a blame thing, but when you're raised in a house where your father is a professor of Marxist economics. Now, you can say that she wasn't in the house because they got divorced. So as she grew up, dad wasn't necessarily in the picture in the house as much, but there's still some visitation, this and that. But my guess is her dad didn't marry somebody who was real high on the conservative Republican scale. You don't normally hire, if you're a Marxist economist and you marry another professor, my guess is many of your beliefs are going to be in line with each other.
Well,
Could it
opposites
happen?
attract, though, so
Well, yeah, and you do have the, you have the Matlin and Carville situation every once in a while. But instead, I think it's more likely that you have a situation like Joe Scarborough and Mika. What's her name? Mika, his co-host.
yeah,
Where
familiar, but yeah, I know who you're talking about. I
yeah,
don't know
so,
her name. Yeah,
so he was a Republican. Now, obviously, he wasn't very conservative, but a Republican. Certainly further right than he is now. So I think it's more likely that that would happen there. That instead of both of you having your strong political opponents, my guess is one way or the other,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So my guess is Kamala Harris during the election. So you have Trump and you have Harris. Is that Harris went, okay, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to move to the middle. I want to get those undecided voters. But if elected, she would have gone right back, especially if she'd gotten the House and the Senate, because you have to assume that if she won and she was strong enough to win, she also would have been strong enough to potentially have more down ballots than um, what we see now. Like Trump, I think Trump down ballot did a pretty good job in terms of the Senate. I don't think we've seen everybody yet. Like I haven't seen Arizona, but I think Carrie Lake or whatever her name is, I think she's going to lose in Arizona.
She lost. She lost.
She did. Yeah, I'm not surprised. If you keep putting up Kookie's gonna keep losing.
Unless it's for the president.
Well, but his is a known crazy. And again, like Carrie Lake, I don't want my senator, whoever it is, honestly, I don't want a sycophant as a senator. I want somebody that I can trust who, when it's what I believe and what I voted for him to do is positive and not just jump on board. And I get it. Again, I'm not MAGA. So like, I have a lot of people who would probably be mad for me saying I still like Mitt Romney as an individual. I think Mitt Romney has made some bad political choices that haven't always agreed with, but I think Romney is still a somebody who votes with a conscience, which is not always the case on either side of the aisle.
Yeah.
Joe Manchin, I was really blown away by. Speaking of Arizona, what's her name? Siesma, I believe is her name. Like she came in Cinema. So she came in as like Green Party leftist, and she was a breath of fresh air because she said, "Look, I have my political beliefs and I believe it, but I'm going to vote for what I think is the best for the country. Like I don't think getting rid of the filibuster is the right thing to do." And so she voted ways that, no, I'm sure she was probably still, for the most part, on her votes. I'll bet you she was probably still in line with close to Bernie Sanders and some other people. But on really issues that were big for the country and how, you don't think so?
No, what she did is she used what was popular in the least path of resistance to get in. And then once she got in, she decided to show her true colors and vote her beliefs, which is why she was a one and done representative. Yeah, you see a lot of guys, but it's the same thing. What's the crazy girl out there that did it? Boebert did the same thing, where she got she got her butt handed to her and lost her primary. Then she switched districts and ended up getting reelected. So I mean, but you see it. It's all tactical.
Did she end up getting reelected?
Yeah, I think she ended up winning in the second district, which is ridiculous. But I mean, you find loopholes and you get in how you get in, man. I mean, I'm not upset at them finding the loopholes and taking advantage of them. I guess I'm upset that the loopholes exist, but then again,
yeah. So she left one district and went to the other district, but her district that she left went Republican as well.
She left the district that she lost in the primary and went to another district.
Is that what it was? And ran a second time and won?
And then went to another district and won. And I'm like, oh.
What do they say? Hate the game?
Yeah, you gotta hate the game. And it's like, I mean, whatever,
I
man.
so that though goes to me. That goes right along the lines of the insanity of our system. You're telling me in that entire district in Colorado, there wasn't somebody, a Joe Schmo, a O'Neill or Bradley, that would have been a better representative than somebody who we've seen a level of, I don't want to say crazy, but of um again, just being it's not even that she's a sycophant. It's just that she's not, I would say presidential, but that's, whatever, not congressional. She doesn't have the level of honor, the level of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Um, I don't know, man,
Gravity.
because I don't know because the scale of morality slides, and
It
it
certainly
one
has
thing,
slid. Yeah.
yeah, and one thing that this election taught me and showed me profoundly is people have a very generous, definition of what they deem moral and what they're okay
Well,
with.
I'm not even saying morality though. I'm saying gravitas maybe is the word.
Well,
Like,
even still though, like even still, and I'll give you an example, right? People got on candidate Harris for you know not being ready and not you know being the representative that they feel comfortable with on a world stage, right?
mhm.
And I say, okay, cool, I get it. She hadn't had the reps, and in a certain arena, I can somewhat understand that. But then you look at the candidate that she was running against, and you look at his behavior, and you say, there is no way in hell a reasonable person, if we applied the standards equally, can say that this guy is more professional than that candidate. You just can't. And anybody who tells you any differently is not being honest. The dude was literally given a microphone, imitating fellatio to a microphone a week out. And
Um,
he's the
yeah.
president of the United States.
So I would say this though. Um, I think that Trump has a. I don't think it's intelligence, and I'm not trying to say that. I think that you can be you can be unserious, or you can lack that level of professionalism or gravitas or whatever, right? Um, and I think we've seen a general decline across the board to some degree. Okay, now the best of the best, they're still going to be coming. They're going to be sneaky as crud when it comes to writing laws, right? McConnell, as weird as McConnell is, and all that, he was really good at doing certain things from a senatorial viewpoint. Now, whether you agree with him or not, and I'm not a fan of McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, as much as whether you agree with her politically or not, she was really good at doing certain things politically.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at some of these people on both sides of the aisle, I look at Boebert and Green and who was Sheila Jackson? Didn't she just passed away recently? Right? Is that
Yeah.
yeah?
Yep.
I thought she was as ridiculous a person as there was, and was she? And there's another lady I can't think of, but I think that as a whole, and this I don't think this is necessarily started with Trump. Um, as a whole, we've gotten away from. How many times can we say this? We've got away from the best and the brightest. And
Cool.
like Carrie Lake, look, she was a journalist. She was a talking head on a morning show, I believe.
All
That
right.
Do you want Ron Burgundy to be your congressman or your senator when he will say anything you write because you put a question mark at the end? You know, go after yourself, San Diego.
Yeah.
That's what that's what morning show people do, and that's what the anchors do. Now, do they do some stuff behind the scene? Do they potentially help write the copy and all that? Yes. But I just think that we hopefully over the next 2-4 years, we return to an era of, we'll never have intellectuals, I don't think, be the norm, but I hope that the seriousness of the office comes back into play in a way that we have gotten away from.
You think
And
so? Wait, you think with this
hope.
administration, we're going to revert to a seriousness in the office?
No. What I'm saying is I'm hoping that in 2026 and 2028 elections moving forward, that both parties,
Okay.
both parties start to look at, it's not a personality thing. It's not, oh, are they MAGA? Are they not MAGA? Are they somebody that can hold a certain level of gravitas and a level of intellectual honesty? Like that's one thing that killed me about Romney is Romney was getting killed in 2012 by Republicans for, well, he used to support pro, it wasn't even pro abortion, like his wife had written or he had written a check, like a donation to something, and now he's like, well, hey, after prayerful consideration and study of the situation and the stem cell lines and being educated on all that, I realized that that's not in line with how I think. And that's what I want a candidate to do. I want them to be able to be given more information and be able to say, okay, my policies have changed. And I didn't see that, for example, in Harris. In Harris, it was, hey, are you going to end fracking? Well, no, I'm not going to support, I'm not going to ban fracking. But I also put that on the media. Okay, what you said in 2019, you supported all fracking. And she says, well, no, I don't. Okay, what's changed? She said, well, my ideas haven't changed, but my policies have changed. And at no point did they say, well, why? How did you come to that understanding? What made you change? So maybe it's also a decline, not only on the political side, but on the journalistic side. And I think that's readily apparent in a lot of our journalists, because even the ones that seem to be honest and seem to be straightforward, again, I think Cheryl Atkinson is a phenomenal reporter. And when she sat down with Trump during this cycle, it got no play. Even though she asked him tough questions, it didn't go anywhere. Brett Baer, I think he asked good questions. And so, okay, so I see those comments you threw up there, KJ. I don't know who put it, so I'm not judging. I haven't seen any names. I'm staying away from the names on the chat. I will say this. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be passed. Why, as American citizens, why are we agreeing that it should be, not only could be passed, but why would we accept that? Isn't it our role to go out and change that? Even if it's just at the ballot box?
No, I think, especially based on this referendum, the American citizenry has shown us that the Southern strategy is alive and well. It is they ran the Nixon playbook to a T, and they enhanced it and they crushed it. I mean, it was one thing I will say about Trump is he is a masterful politician. For him not to have a history in politics, the dude knows how to message, right? And he did that, phenomenally. And then you run him up against a inexperienced candidate, and she was doomed to fail from day one. When she announced herself, I knew, I said that her fatal flaw is they put her in a bad position. She didn't have the reps. She didn't have the reps. We're getting a lot. I can't. Hey, hey guys, we don't know who you guys are. It keeps saying Facebook user, but hi. I just want to make sure we acknowledge you guys. Yeah, I want to I want to just go back to just, a couple of things
Mhm.
in terms of decorum. I don't think I think we're closer. Oh, that's all right. That's that. It's Ali and that's Elton. What's up? Oh, we got the whole crew here. Oh, this is definitely gonna be good. What's going on? Oh, this is definitely gonna be a good show. So in terms of decorum, man, I don't think
And what's funny with those three people, if all it is Facebook user, we won't know who's making which comment. So I might be like, Allie, what are you doing?
So
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I just, with this administration, there are a couple of things I'm concerned about, right? I don't think MAGA and the MAGA movement will survive without Trump, because a movement this volatile takes a special personality, right? A guy like Vance can't carry a movement like Trump because he doesn't have the swagger to carry a movement. He doesn't have the personality, right? Vance is more of a traditionalist. Huh?
Does it matter?
So,
So let me ask you with that then. Boil down what MAGA means for you, not to make America great.
No. So I'll make it easier for you, right? So when you think of Black Lives Matter, right?
Mhm.
Instantly, we've had this conversation, ad nauseum, right? You say, hey, I agree with the premise, right? But that organization is flawed to a T, right? So I will take you and I will tell you it's the exact same premise, just different sheets with MAGA, right? The premise is outstanding, but the organization is flawed to a T. And for the same exact reasons that you feel the BLM is flawed, it's the same exact reasons that MAGA is flawed, right? You, on the surface, it makes sense, right? We all want America to be great. Why? Because we're American citizens, right? Who isn't for smaller government, stronger borders, strong economy, right? But
But there are a lot of people who aren't for those things.
well, no, and that's where the nuances come in, and it's always the devil in the details, right? Because just like with BLM, right? They'll say, well, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. This is about Black lives, right? But, what am I doing? I'm skimming off the top. I'm building mansions. I'm, buying Corvettes. I'm throwing it in the back, right? But then you look at this MAGA movement and they'll say, hey, strong borders, strong economy. And fucking 2 hours after the election results are announced, the 10 richest people get $60 billion richer. But we're supposed to expect that those trickle down economics is going to come down, right?
How did they get richer? How did they get $60 billion richer?
How did they get richer? By the stock market going up, right? By the stock market going up, right?
So, you're gonna with that, right? So let me ask you something.
Yeah.
If the 10 richest people went up $60 billion the night after the election, do you know what percentage of Americans have money in the stock market?
What's the amount?
I believe it's 65%. I believe that's the number. I remember Neil Cavuto putting that number out one time. And I really like Cavuto. I think he's an actual.
Yeah, Cavuto's great. Yeah. I like Cavuto.
So if those top 10 people made that much, wouldn't it also mean that 65% of America that are involved in the stock market also all came out ahead just on the stock market? And again,
in theory, I mean, but
you'd
again,
have to cash out and all. Yeah.
In theory, but again, there you go, right? So again, there we go, right? That's the same thing we say. Well, in theory, yeah, that makes sense, right? When we look at it at the macro level, well, hey, these guys are getting richer. You guys had an opportunity to get richer. It's not my fault you didn't take advantage, right?
So here's my problem with that argument, and this goes into the economic problem.
Sure,
is that those those 10 people? Let's just go by the 10 people. $60 billion with a B, right? You said right? Okay.
Yeah,
$60 billion.
64 billion.
Okay, 64 billion. Okay,
billion.
Okay, those 10 people made $64 billion. Did that $64 billion come out of anybody's pocket?
No. Not at all.
So what's the problem?
Here's the problem. Here's the problem, and I'm so glad you asked that question. Right? Here's the problem. Three out of those 10 are directly associated with your administration. Another 4 out of those 10 are secondarily associated with that administration. It doesn't bother you, does it? No. So here's
how do you
hold on.
become
Let me
rich?
explain it to you. But let me explain it to you, right? So you say that doesn't bother me, right? So then you sit back and you look, right? And you say, okay, well, they'll say one of the main policies we talk about is say, okay, well, we need to cut government spending. We're gonna cut programs, right? First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna cut NASA. And I'm using this as because it was brought up, right? So we're gonna cut NASA and we're gonna take government spending from NASA and we're gonna privatize it, right? You say, all right, cool. That sounds great on the surface, right? But then you look back and you look at those numbers again, right? We look at those numbers. 3 out of those 10 that just made that 64 billion within the first couple of hours of him getting elected, guess what they have? Privatized space programs. And you say, well, damn, that's a hell of a coincidence that they're that closely related to the government. Now, could that be coincidence?
Bezos, Musk. Who's the third that has a privatized?
Bezos, Musk, and what's the guy? The
Richard Branson?
No. Branson fell out. Virgin Atlantic fell out. It's the other dude.
Not Zuckerberg.
No. It's the other South African dude.
Oh, I don't know.
It's the other South African dude, but he's more of an advanced guy than the Trump guy.
Oh,
but what you start to see is these loose connections, right? And you say, oh well, you know, I'm all for everybody getting their piece of the pie, but then how close is too close, right? And then we'll say, well, where's the line?
Okay, so let me ask you this. Were you, and this is, and maybe the answer is you were you just as worried in 2020 when Bezos and Zuckerberg and Silicon Valley was in bed with Biden and the Democrats?
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Even more so.
So there's a point, this becomes the Nixon theory, right? If Kennedy went out and did all these things and basically set the playbook and said, this is how I'm going to become president. And then 8 years later, Nixon says, well, danged if I'm going to lose again to somebody using these, bag of dirty tricks. So yeah, my guys need to go use whatever. The cat's out of the bag. So
yeah,
it's tough. It's tough for me to say, especially when somebody like Musk, we'll use Musk specifically because I look at Musk and say, he's been successful. Now you can say he shouldn't get government subsidies. We can talk about government subsidies because I'm not a fan of government subsidies for any private industry. But I don't think there's much of a debate that Musk has done more when it comes to getting rockets off the ground and back on the ground and satellites in space. He's done a better job in a privatized world than NASA has in the past short term, past 3 or 4 years, let alone the past 10 years.
But is it really privatized if you're getting billions in subsidies though?
Now that's it, and that's a different argument because that's part of the deal is that if the government is saying, okay, we're going to subsidize what you're doing for $10 billion. And when you launch these, we expect you to give us considerations on payloads and some of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe the Space Web, the Webb Space Telescope, I believe it was not launched by NASA. That was by a privatized, and I'm not 100% sure on that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't subsidize and say, all right, as a private company, is the James Webb Space Telescope even in space right now? And the value of that. Now, look, we can go back and forth and we can say how much involvement. I personally, I'm not a fan of the government picking and choosing winners and losers. I wasn't a fan when it was green energy. I'm not a fan when it's ethanol, corn-based ethanol instead of grass-based ethanol, which has a higher return on energy. I'm not a fan of government subsidies for sugarcane, for a lot of those things. But I think that somebody was saying it's out of the bag as far as we're past that point. I get frustrated because this idea that as a country we can't course correct and do better, isn't that the whole point?
Well, the issue I have with it is we'll tout subsidies, right? We'll tout subsidies for these billionaire companies, right? And we'll say, hey, this is great. This guy's got 80 billion gazillion dollars, but we're gonna give him, several billion more in subsidies because he needs it, right? But then we'll turn right back around and we'll say, well, children on SNAP benefits or children with child care credits, they don't need those subsidies, so we're gonna cut those credits.
So I think there's a
And here's the reason why they do that, right? And they'll say, oh, well, they don't need those subsidies because people shouldn't depend on the government for a handout. And that
now that's so I'll say a couple things here.
Yeah, let's go. Because
so one thing is that it's not a zero-sum game. Just because
no, absolutely not.
Just because you give a subsidy to let's use SpaceX. We're just going to go SpaceX against the kids. If you give a subsidy to SpaceX, you're not taking money out of the kids' mouths. Generally, that subsidy is done in a tax break. Now, if you want to say those taxes would then be used to fund children's breakfast, that's not necessarily true either, right? So that's now. Can we do better? I look at it and say, look, and I've had people say this. There's no reason any kid in America should not be able to get food, right? I 100% agree. Do I think the federal government is the one that should be doing that, though? No, I think there should be food banks. I think any kid, if they're 5 years old, 8 years old, 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, they should be able to walk in with their mom and dad into a mom or dad or guardian or whatever. I'd love to see every supermarket have a little brown bag lunch every morning, whatever.
Yeah,
grab it.
But just to be clear, though, child tax credits are just that, though. So the subsidies are exactly the same. So there's no just so we're clear on that. There's no discrepancy. A subsidy is still a subsidy either way.
But KJ, here's the thing, though. Like you look at the income tax. Everybody loves the child income tax credit, right? Well, who's benefiting from the child subsidy tax? Parents, right? So you're getting money off of your tax return. Well, I could argue and say, well, your parents, if you're getting this tax return, why aren't they spending money on food? There's a point where the government, to me, the government is there to protect our most vulnerable citizens, mostly kids and mostly the elderly, right? You have some people with real mental, I don't even know what the phrase is anymore, mental retardation. What do we call that nowadays? I don't want to offend anybody, right?
I'm with you.
Right? But we've got to the point where if you want to help kids, it used to be that it was the church doing that. It used to be it was the community doing that. It used to be that it was the neighbor next door saying, hey, come on over here, little Billy, little Johnny, little Jerome, little Stephanie, little LaQuanda, and saying, and I'm trying to not say that racist, I'm trying to give a background of everybody who used to do this. It used to be like the more stable houses that might live next to or apartment that might live a little less stable house. They could go and knock on the door and say, Miss Johnson, I don't have anything here you go.
It used to be community based is what you're saying. Yep.
Right. And now with government overreach, you have these charities that get shut down that are trying to feed homeless people because they don't have the right food handler permit. So to me, couple things. Government needs to get out of the way and let the communities start helping themselves again. And part of the way you do that is, like, you want to say tax breaks, have money back to themselves. Keep the money where it started, in the pockets of the individuals. I don't think subsidies are the way to go. But there's a point where you can say it's not okay for Musk to get these contracts. And I have a bigger problem with no bid contracts than I do with, if he's the most competitive and he happens to support Trump, but he put the most competitive in. But that's also where, let me see if I can stop you from laughing at that. That's where we need to have actual disclosure. We need crazy, I know. I tell you.
So wait. I'm glad you brought that up. So listen, Jared Kushner, right? Last administration, when they went into office, they were only worth a couple of $1 million. I think like something paltry, like $4 million. Not, petty cash, right? When they left office, his real estate development company was worth over $300 million. And you know how they got it? Wait, I'm explaining how they got it.
I know.
They got it by winning government contracts during Trump's presidency. And I'm pretty sure they had a bidding process. And you know what? I'm pretty sure they were damn competitive. I'm pretty sure they were damn competitive.
How did Harry Reid make his money?
Well, this isn't about Harry Reid right now. We're talking about, and here's the difference, though, right? We can say Harry Reid, but Harry Reid didn't have a direct pipeline to the contracts, though. So what we're talking? No, hell no, man. See, and again, that's the biggest issue, right? Well, and here's the biggest issue, and that's why I'm so afraid of this administration, right? Because when you call out the fallacies of this policy and the things that people are really concerned about, why we bring policy, we'll say, oh, well, such and such did this. Okay, cool, great, they did, and that's got control, and that was controlled, right? And he was admonished for it. But what you don't do is you don't catch it on the back.
Say that again. Who was
Harry Reid? Yeah, when they found out, the whole reason they can't insider trading now is because of that. Him and got caught up in that.
No. That's Pelosi.
Harry Reid got caught up in that too.
Here's what Harry Reid would do. Harry Reid would go in and see what contracts were being built in and around Las Vegas, especially. He would go in and buy the land, and then when the government deals were announced, he would turn around and sell the land. He was a land speculator. Yeah. It's the same thing that Nancy Pelosi did. Look, if you and I are saying we need to stop insider trading, especially by Congress, hey, we're on the same page, right? I don't know if Kushner, and I know you say he will, and if he did, then it's wrong. I'm saying both ways it's effed up, right? If Kushner was given inside information on what the bid was, like, hey, Jared, you just need to bid $49.9995 million, then that's absolutely wrong. And if they should whistleblow and they corrupt. Look, I'm all for anti-corruption. I think I'm the type of person who, when I went in and I would do DTS on my travel voucher, that's Defense Travel System, I looked at every single penny because I never wanted anybody to be able to come back and say, oh, you cheated on that. Even if it was this much, even if it was $5, I put in receipts when I didn't need to. And I think that as a country, yeah, you're gonna have graft. You've had that for forever, right? The original pay for play, I believe, was one of the first 5 presidents. It might have been John Quincy Adams, who said, "Look, I want to have my guys in place," and that was the start of political appointments for all intents and purposes, right?
Yep.
So we're never going to get to the point where you have a 100% uncorrupted organization. Anywhere you have a large organization, you're going to have corruption, you're going to have mismanagement, you're going to have bad deeds. I would like to think that my church does about as well as any major organization out there because they do audits, um, you know, they do all the stuff you're supposed to do above board, and yet you still have people say, "Well, they did this and they did that, and I don't like what they did," and you're going to have stuff like that. And if it's a church like the Catholic Church could have done everything right, but it doesn't matter if they did everything right if there were priests that diddled little kids,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So organizations and the U.S. government, unfortunately, is not free of corruption. It's not free of graft. It's not free of um, pay for play. And I have just as big a problem with Hunter Biden going out and getting a job and making that much money off of his dad's name as I do if Jared Kushner came in and said, "Hey, my father-in-law is Trump. You need to award me this contract." But Trump will tell you, remember, that's why Trump got in 2016 when Hillary said, "This man manipulates the tax system and he has a army of accountants to make sure he doesn't have to pay the taxes." And what did Trump do? "Yeah, I do. You don't like it? Change the system." So if we're arguing they need to change the system to get rid of those things, I'm with you, man. I think we need to have a better job. And I truly wish that everybody you and I are in a weird situation, right? Because your wife's still in the military, I'm still in the military. If you go and you apply for a job at AFES, or my wife at AFES, if you don't know, they run the PX and the commissary and on post stuff. And if either of us, you go apply or my wife goes apply, so the non-military spouse goes and apply, it asks on the application, is your spouse or do you have a family member that is in the United States government, right? Because
Mhm.
they don't want to have that, even the idea, the impropriety. But at the same time, here we have the highest levels, and we've talked about this before. We've talked about the sailor who takes pictures of a nuclear submarine with a picture in the back because he's like, "Hey, look at, click at it." He's not selling secrets to the Chinese. He's just being a dummy and taking a picture, doing a selfie with the nuclear reactor behind him. He ends up in jail or arrested and investigated and everything else. His life torn apart.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Biden and Trump store top secret materials in their closets and nothing, right? So there's a lot there to unpack, right? But ultimately, here's what it boils down to for me. And I understand we won't get to this. Am I trying to excuse corruption? No. I think corruption should absolutely be prosecuted. That said, the Defense Department, who answers directly to the president, is never going to really seriously go after anybody who's directly in line with their boss. Look at what's going on. Perfect example. Did you see that? Who's the special prosecutor?
Jack Smith.
Adam Smith. What's his first name?
Jack.
Jack. Jack Smith has moved to dismiss basically all charges against Trump, right? Why?
Because the Supreme Court gave the president immunity.
No, not yet, because the investigation was done. No, think about it. It was not done until this week, until Trump won. And as soon as Trump won, then he said, "Okay, let's dismiss everything."
Yeah.
Do you believe that if Harris had won on Tuesday, that Smith would have been moving to dismiss?
No, again, he gave the Supreme Court gave the president immunity, and they weren't going to get a verdict done before the inauguration. So you can't bring charges up on a sitting president.
So let me But again, hold on.
in
Let
order.
me ask you something. Let me ask you. I think this is really important. If Harris had won, would he still be prosecuting Trump?
Yeah, because Trump wasn't the president. Yeah.
Well, he's still not the president, though. But
Well,
I understand the argument of time frame. I understand.
There's no way. There's no way for them to be able to prosecute and get a trial and a verdict before he becomes president.
Let me pose something. Let me pose something to you.
Anything he has would make him.
Let me pose something to you.
Sure.
Is it possible that if Harris had won, those charges also would have gone away?
No.
I think it's possible.
No way.
Why not?
No way. Because the charges in New York are still pending.
Which charges?
The charges about the real estate are still in New York. Matter of fact, I think he gets read next week.
Okay, so that's at the appeals court.
Yeah.
Okay, so have you read anything that happened on the appeals court? What happened as far as what the appeals court said?
No, man. To be honest with you, once it looked like he was pretty much heading toward another presidency, all these charges and stuff just
before the appeals court, the end of September was when the appeals court heard. I don't remember which district it is, but the appeals court heard the argument. And basically, they said to New York, Alvin Bragg, I believe is who was prosecuting it. They said, okay, can you show us a single time that you prosecuted somebody that borrowed money from a bank, that paid the money back, and that the bank said, we're fine with it. We knew he was inflating the price. That's part of doing business. We knew that's just normal quid pro quo, and we're willing to do it again. And the prosecution came back and said, nope, sorry, we couldn't find anything. By the end of the hearing, the closing arguments were basically, please don't censor us. Please don't censure us. That was from the New York. That thing is going to be absolutely tossed. I'd put $100 on it. I'll double down on our milkshake that you already won from having a better map than I did.
Yeah, he's still. I think he has a sentencing coming up at the end of the.
Wait, what was that one on the 26th?
Yeah, I think he has a
sentence. That about the 26th.
Yeah, I think he has a sentencing coming up.
Which one on the 26th?
That's what I'm trying to pull up now. I got to find it out.
Because the New York one is already past that. It's at the appeals stage.
No. He's got a couple in New York. He's got the defamation lawsuit, the civil case, the defamation lawsuit, the financial statement fraud lawsuit in New York.
Okay, so the financial statement fraud, the one he was quote unquote convicted for, that's the one that's going to get tossed.
Yep. So he still got the defamation one.
Who was the defamation against?
The defamation was against E. Jean Carroll. That's the one where she won the $83 million. The falsifying business records. He's been convicted for that one. And
the business records one is the one that's going to get tossed out. So the E. Jean Carroll, and what's the other one? Wasn't it like threatening something with? Wasn't it something with Georgia? Because we know the.
I'm just talking about the ones in New York for right now. I'm just talking about the ones in New York right now.
Oh, okay.
Because I think that's the one where he's going to be sentenced. Because all the ones, obviously, all the federal ones are getting tossed out.
But regardless of him being reelected, the fraud one was going to go away. The appeals court is going to overturn that, and it has nothing to do with him being reelected. The E. Jean Carroll one. What was the other one in New York you're bringing up?
That was, let's see, that's Jack Smith.
Voter tampering. Is voter tampering New York or Georgia?
That was election interference in Georgia. So
Georgia, right.
Those are the big five, right? The falsifying the business record. The three in New York are the financial statement fraud, the falsifying business records. So those are two separate guilty verdicts, and then the defamation.
So okay, so the financial ones are going to get tossed by the appeal.
Yeah, so financial statement fraud is the one that where the appeals court was like, no, that one not so much. But he
So-
still has to go back for falsifying business records in New York.
So
and then the defamation he's already had to pay out.
So the Carol one was a civil suit.
Yeah.
And that honestly, that should scare the crap out of everybody. If you go and read what her allegations were and how much proof or not proof she had, and basically to have a judgment against somebody with no proof, with no substantiating records, where that one, I mean, I just look at that and go, it was Blasey Ford to Kavanaugh again. I mean, it was ridiculous. And then for him and then the civil court said, well, because he was found liable in civil court, and then him saying, I never raped her, I don't even know who she is, I never touched her. Then the Supreme Court the civil court then turned around saying, well, now you're in trouble again because now you're denying what the verdict was. I mean, my goodness, like, to me, that's insane. And I've lived through not federal stuff, but I've lived through military stuff like that, where it's like, I get in trouble if I come out and say, no, this never happened. Like, I still can't even talk about, well, maybe I can. I don't dare to because I don't trust.
Yeah.
Right.
I think you can handle this over, but I wouldn't. Just for
I won't until I'm out next summer. So, as far as the Georgia one, here's the other problem I have with the Georgia one. And I think Trump kind of made this argument on Rogan. Now, first of all, I think until Trump comes out and says, I have books on this stuff. Hey, first of all, dude, then lay the books out, right? I think Trump has a very, very bad habit of saying, I have the receipts, and then never showing the receipts. And so I think that's kind of
he has he does that.
Yeah.
From time
so
to time.
So that I'd like to see.
Let me get the
But at the same time, I heard today, I was listening and it was on CNN, so I couldn't tell you. It sounded like Dana Bash. And I believe she was talking to some congressman, and I don't know who it was. It sounded like Paul Ryan, and it's obviously not Paul Ryan. But that's what it sounded like. And she was saying, okay, so with Trump, you guys were all saying, and even Trump was saying last week, see, there's fraud. Fraud is coming. The election fraud. And now that he won, none of you guys are saying this fraud. So why the change, right? And I thought that was actually a pretty good question. And I do think that the congressman that she was talking to, he never gave a straight answer. He did the politician thing. Well, let's actually talk about the 1.3 million, whatever it was, right?
Mhm.
And I'm sitting listening to this, and I do think it's interesting that the Republicans and the Democrats, don't get me wrong, I think they are both stupid because they miss easy opportunities. If I'm a congressman and she's asking, or a Republican, and again, I'm an independent, if she asks me, well, wait a minute, you say that the 2020 election was manipulated, but you don't think it's manipulated because Trump won this time. What do you say to that? I'd say, I think they were both manipulated, and I think there should absolutely be a full forensic audit of both the 2020 elections, the 2022 elections, and the 2024 elections. That our system needs to be above reproach. But instead, the GOP guy, whoever it was just like, oh, well, of course Trump won, so we want to move on and let's talk about the good things that Trump's going to do. It's like, they're stupid. For these politicians, they've also got into such a habit of just all this without actually saying anything. And I think that's in large part what Harris got in trouble for, was just she would say all the words without saying anything. And Trump did a lot of it. Trump would start to just ramble too, and not really. It's not that he didn't say anything. It was just like what he was saying didn't matter. But it would be interesting to see Republicans to go back on 2020 and 2022 and 2024 and have an audit of the system. That said, A, not only will it not happen, B, I wouldn't trust the government to audit themselves any more than I'd like the Catholic Church to investigate their own complaints against priests, because we've seen this game. So I'm disappointed in that, just from our conversation and what people are talking about. I'm disappointed that we can't even try to hold our representatives and our government to a higher standard. That is really frustrating. The fact that whether it's here in Georgia or South Carolina or Utah or wherever, I think it sucks that
we got some work to do.
Yeah, I think it sucks we don't have the type of character people. And this is where, I mean, when we started this, we were talking. The reason this came up is, how do you fix this? How do we fix this country in a way that is beneficial for everybody, right? And if we can't even propose that it would be a good idea to elect people with higher morals and better ethical standards, and the response is, yeah, good luck, that's really sad. That's really disappointing. So I'd like to see us get past that. Yeah, it's getting hot. And that's really frustrating. So, all right. On to segment 2.
That's it. Segment 2. You ready? All right. So we're gonna break down the voting block, the mythical voting block for the election. We're gonna bring in a past guest. Dear brother Elton is here to join us again. So we're gonna bring him in. I know he's been in the comments chopping it up, so this is gonna be fun. Let me see if we can everybody welcome Elton back to the stage. What's up, good brother?
Hey, what's going on, brother?
I'm glad to see you survive the apocalypse.
How y'all doing?
I'm good. I'm glad to see you survive the election apocalypse.
Man, I'm surviving. Hey, look, I'm still gonna be me.
So for this segment, man, we are going to break down and talk about the I think that's Allie, Facebook user, says, hey. So we're gonna break down the voting block, man. I know one of the biggest things that they kind of talked about was the momentum that the red team was getting for black men voters, and how that was going to be a significant determining factor,
right,
for 2024. And then a couple other factors, man. So Chappie, if you don't mind, man, I'm gonna just start with Elton, man, and just kind of get your initial thoughts, man. So what is there anything on this chart that surprised you?
No. Believe it or not, no.
Really?
I'm serious. No. Not at all. Not the white women vote, not the black men vote, not the Latino vote. No. Nothing really surprised me. I knew going in it was going to be a problem. When you have a candidate who has 100 days, who basically almost ran a flawless campaign. I mean, let's just be real. I mean, for the time she had till now, she still got 69 million votes. I mean, that ain't nothing. But the fact that certain initiatives on the ballot was on the line and people voted the way they voted, to me, it was more about money than anything else. It was not about immigration. It was not about women's rights. It was 100% about money. And
You
at the end of the day,
Economy.
yeah, the economy, money, yeah.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, people are going to vote their pocketbooks, and everything else is substandard.
So one of the things that I found interesting when I was in my reflective time is looking back over the election cycles for some of the democracies around the world post COVID. One thing I realized is none of the governments that took control right after COVID, who were in charge of administering the government during the recovery of COVID,
Yeah, every government lost.
got reelected.
Every opposite government compared to the government that was in power,
Right.
lost. Yeah.
So
yeah.
given that, given that data, I kind of knew going into this one that she was fighting an uphill battle.
Yep.
Then you throw into the fact that one, she started, extremely late, and then she didn't have the reps, and girl was, she was trying to go uphill and go uphill in the snow with church shoes on. It was just a bad gig for her, man.
Right.
One thing that really, like, nothing really surprised me. I told a friend of mine offline that I was joking about, Lance, it's my turn to get canceled. You always say controversial stuff to get canceled. It's my turn. I said, whenever Democrats have to depend on white women for the vote, they're in trouble.
We'll lose. It's a loser. It's a loser every time.
And I said they didn't learn their lesson with Hillary Clinton with that "I'm with her" campaign. And I think the moment that kind of sealed the deal for Kamala Harris was when I first saw that ad with Liz Cheney where they was like, "Oh, you don't have to tell your husband who you're voting for." And I knew at that moment, I said, you just killed the campaign.
Yeah, I knew that was a wrong strategy too.
I said at that moment, I said, no, whatever goodwill or whatever momentum you possibly had, you destroyed it. I said, absolutely. No excuses. They served up to lose. The girl was fighting,
Yeah.
And
that's. I mean, they knew she was going to lose. It was just like, you ever see the movie Head of State?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they thought it was going to be just like that, and she ended up getting more steam than what they thought she was going to get.
And they bought it.
Yeah,
absolutely. So it was telling, like, I never. One thing about the suburban voting bloc, they are extremely loyal, right? And they vote in pairs. So white women go as white men go. Historically, they never vote opposite of each other. It doesn't matter if you say, "Hey, I'm going to kill every white woman as soon as I'm elected if you elect me." They will still, if the white man votes for that candidate, the white woman will be right behind him, right? That's just the data. The white woman and the white man vote together. They do. Where you do see separatism is you tend to see a little bit of splitting between the black vote. Sometimes you may see a little bit of differentials between the black man and black woman vote.
We all know why the black vote went the way it went, especially with the men.
Well, that too, but the thing that was most surprising was the Latino woman vote, right? I kind of expected some movement with the Latino men vote, only because they have a, historically they're not really a big female voting bloc, and even on down ballots, Latino men don't really vote for women like that. But the Latino woman vote was really, really surprising to me. Outside of that, I didn't see any surprises, or I didn't. Trump, I think Lance and we talked about it. 20% was really what we were talking about, right? Well, where we thought we'd be at. I think some polls had it as high as like 28%, which I thought was ridiculous. I said 18 to 20 is normally about where he'd normally be at. 24 was like the high side. I think we talked about.
I think we said if Trump could get 15, if you told Trump right now you could get 15% of black males,
Yeah,
go
yeah,
run
he'd
for the Senate.
he'd take it and run, right? Yeah, and I think that's where we. Yeah,
So with that, I want something you two just said. I'd like to hear you guys expand on this because I clearly can't. You said
Yeah,
the black vote of the 20% of black men voting for Trump is not a surprise. I'd love to hear why that wouldn't be a surprise for you guys. Like you said, of course we knew it, but
Trump
why
checks.
does that?
Because people are ill-informed. The black community is ill-informed, and the black community don't have certain resources that other communities have when it comes to this whole political democracy. That's why we wasn't very surprised when the black vote went the way it went. See, the thing about it is that in the black community, as a black man, we are the last on the totem pole. I mean, it's a fact. All the other races, genders, creeds, whatever you want to say, black men is always the last one to be looked at. So when they got that little cutback check, first thing they saw was his name on the check. And they went ahead and said, oh, well, he giving us money. So, of course, I'm going to roll with him. And you have to understand the fact that who Trump was. In the black community back in the day, before we learned out everything we learned about him, he was known and revered in rap songs, and he was a rich man who could get all kinds of women whenever he wanted to get. He rode around in limousines. See, in the black community, being rich and being a part of a high stature, that matters in the black community. It matters a lot. So they see this rich white man going around, hanging around with celebrities that they knew, people that they respected, and they said, well, the hell, I want to be just like that. So at the end of the day, you have to look at it from that perspective. The other perspective is there are a lot of rich black men who did not want their taxes changed. So, yeah, like people like 50 Cent, who was a Trump supporter, and he basically said, I'm already paying 30% in New York, where I live. I'm not paying no more than what I'm already paying, so I'm supporting Donald Trump. There are a lot of debilitating factors. And one other factor is that as a black man, you were taught that women don't lead. So sometimes in the black community, we see a woman who's black, who's leading and a higher power, and we say, oh no, we can't have this. This can't happen that way. So that's why we're not surprised about the numbers.
From an evangelical standpoint.
From an evangelical standpoint, yes.
Wait, before I see your mind chirping, Lance. Before you jump in, I'm gonna piggyback and caveat on that. So a lot of that 20% vote for black men is built in reputation, right? And we kind of hinted at that a little bit. Trump had a 20-year repository of reputation or cred in the black community, right? Where he was one of us, right? Trump ran in hip hop circles. He was at black events, right? With all these higher echelon black celebrities. So from the 80s to about 95, 96, Trump was hip hop, right? Or even I'd say early 2000s. So
yeah, he was in rap songs.
That's what I'm saying. So you still have that segment of the population who to them, Trump is still, you know what I'm saying? They look at it differently. So that embedded, that 15 to 20% wasn't gonna change. And there was nothing substantial enough that Kamala could put out that was gonna change their mind. And like I said, with her having, such a short period of time to get her feet up under her, and then not having anything of substance to say when she finally came out, she didn't really catch her groove until the last 20 days of the election, where she started dropping policy, and hell, she didn't even drop her initiatives for black community or black businesses to like the last 15 days of the election. By then it was too far, too little, too late. People had already made their mind.
Yep.
So it's just a series of unfortunate events, so you preface all of that, and then on top of that, you're gonna say, hey man, I'm already hurting on top of it, and then as a business owner, you're gonna tax me even more. Yeah, nah, I can't rock with you, Kamala. I'm gonna go with the crazy I know instead of the crazy I don't know. So yeah, so that 15-20% for black men, it wasn't surprising.
Never was to me.
And we knew black women were gonna. I'm surprised she didn't get closer to 98%, honestly, with black women, because I knew that's if one thing black women gonna do is they gonna stand up and support each other. So, but go ahead. I see them wheels turning. This is gonna be good. What you got?
There's a few things. The 47% rule, KJ, we've talked about that, right? The 47% rule that 47% are going to vote Democrat, 47% are going to vote Republican no matter what, right?
Yep.
Harris got 47.95%. So for running a quote unquote perfect campaign, she didn't even pick up 1%. So might I just suggest that it might have had something to do with the candidate? I don't.
That's not true. That's not true, because Mark Robinson in North Carolina got 40% of the vote. That's the standard. 40% is the standard.
Right.
So that's really not true.
Well, I'll preface that to say yes and no. Right. She had 100 days. 100 days. Right. And in 100 days, she had to spin up an election. She didn't have the reps. She had to, we talked about this. She never had she had one national debate, and she got her ass handed to us. Excuse my crassness, guys. She got her ass handed to her by Tulsi Gabbard in the one national debate she had an opportunity to speak on. So she just didn't have the reps. She was not prepared. I think if they were going to have President Biden be a one-term president, the proper strategy would have been to not, push him through the primary and have a proper primary. And if she would have won, then great. But they did her a disservice by waiting all the way to the end and then throwing her up there and assuming that just because one, she was black, and two, she was a woman, she was gonna win. They made the same mistakes they made with Hillary, and they didn't learn anything. And it was a fatal flaw. And that's my biggest thing. That's my biggest thing. That's my biggest concern with Harris as a candidate. They didn't do her any justice.
Not to mention, you have the same people who ran those campaigns trying to scramble to run her campaign. They need to change as far as who's running the campaigns, who can reach more of a younger demographic, and who can reach more people instead of these men who are in charge of her campaign, who've been on previous campaigns that lost and some campaigns that had won.
Well,
and thought they were doing her a service when they weren't.
Jamie Harrison did the admirable thing and fell on his sword for her. And I
know.
I respect that brother a whole lot. And I think I really wish he hadn't have done it, but I understand why he did it. But yeah, I'm upset because one, Kamala Harris deserved better as a candidate, right? The American people deserve better as a populace, right?
Certainly, the American people don't believe they deserve better. So
Well, I say that to say that they deserve better as a populace to not have somebody, because here's what happened, and here's what happened, right? Joe Biden has a horrible debate, and if we break everything down and we look at this objectively, Joe Biden has a horrible debate, right? And then nobody has to say so. The Democratic Party takes upon themselves, say, you know what, Joe, you're not gonna win, you're out. Kamala, jersey up. It's like they pulled off a bench, put on a jersey, and told her to get in the game.
Yep.
Right? And so you got half the population like, what the hell just happened? We didn't pick this candidate, so she's already coming into the game with the negative connotation, like, oh, so this is your boy. We don't even know her. This is who you pick. This is who you pick. It's the same thing when they chose Hillary and leapfrog Biden the first time.
So it didn't matter that Harris, as VP, had incredibly low approval ratings to begin with?
Well, but
Yeah,
again,
Mike Pence had low approval ratings. Like, I mean, like,
And Mike Pence didn't win.
come on, man.
hold on,
Like,
hold on. But see, that's my point. The fact that they just chose her and they didn't properly vet a viable candidate, right? Because if you go back and you look at the interview, Pelosi says, "Oh, well, we did an internal primary and nobody wanted to run against her," which was bullshit.
Yeah,
I mean, if we're being honest, that was garbage, right?
she was set to lose because
Right.
nobody wanted to take that job on.
They set her up.
Yeah.
Can I hold on? Okay, so the argument is that, and I don't remember which of you said this. The Democrats knew that Harris was going to lose, so why put her in place to lose if you knew she was going to lose? If you thought Biden's going to lose, I'm confused. Why replace? Why solely?
No, that's not the argument. That's what I'm saying. That's not the argument. That's not the argument at all. So they knew Biden was going to lose. They opened it up. They opened up, says, "Listen, we got 100 days. We need somebody. Biden ain't it." The rest of the guys, the up and comers, was like, "Yo, you know what? This is dead on arrival." I think, matter of fact, even what's his name out of California, Newsom, right?
Newsom didn't want it. No, he didn't want it.
Newsom even came on and was like, "Yeah, no." Like he even went on interview and was like, "Yo, that's not my race. I'll see you in 2028."
Nobody wanted it.
So what they did, she got it by default. And even if you go back and you look at it, the first couple of days the first couple of days after they made the decision to have Biden step down, there was some conversation about who it was going to be, because they were vetting candidates. They weren't sure that it was going to be the VP. So after their let's just say top 5 or whatever said no, they came back and rallied around and said, "Okay, well, Kamala, you're up." So
okay, but at the same time, okay, let's look at the timeline here real quick.
Yeah.
Biden has the bad debate, right?
In June.
June. Everybody on the Democrat side is freaking out, saying, "Oh my gosh, like Biden."
That same night.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. But within a matter of days, you had the George Clooney op-ed. You had his friends absolutely turning on him. You have people coming out saying, he needs to, for the good of the country, he needs to step aside."
Yeah.
Right?
Get us a candidate that can win.
Right. And so it takes, I believe it was 10 days? The debate was on a Thursday, and then he dropped out overnight Saturday night, early Sunday morning. Is that what it was?
Something like that. And then they didn't announce the candidate for like another week or so.
It was almost the first week in July.
But right as Biden dropped out, he said, "I endorse Harris."
No,
I
he
think
didn't.
my V. Are you sure? I could have sworn it was like the next day he did.
No, he did not. No.
I could be wrong.
Yeah. I don't think so. We'd have to go back and look at that. No.
Biden didn't endorse her until 2 days after she was nominated to take his place.
2 days after she won the digital primary or the phone primary.
That they did with the delegates.
Yeah, she didn't get endorsed by the president until after she won the virtual primary. I took the map down. God dang it.
You're both wrong. According to AP, July 21st, 2024, President Biden dropped out of the race for the White House on Sunday, ending his bid for re-election with Donald Trump. Fast forward to the next paragraph. The president, intent on serving out the remainder of his term in office, quickly endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to take on Trump and encouraged his party to unite behind her, making her.
Yeah, he was the first one. He was the first one that came out for.
No,
but it was like a day or two later.
Wait. No, did he endorse her or did he vouch for her?
Hold on.
He vouched for her. He didn't give her his endorsement.
According to AP, let me read that again. According to AP, the president, intent on serving out the remainder of his term in office, quickly endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to take on Trump and encouraged his party to unite behind her, making her the party's instant favorite for the nomination at its August convention in Chicago. Now, hold on. The reason I say that, I'm actually trying to support your guys' argument about Harris, is that by Biden doing that, it didn't make anybody else able to step forward and say, well, yeah, I'd kind of like to. Biden actually hamstrung the Democratic Party by doing that. If Biden had said, hey, I'm going to step for the good of the country, I'm going to step down. You know, it's been a tough decision for my wife and I think it's important for the Democrats to rally behind the nominee, whoever that may be. Now I think you've got a little bit different situation where if Harris comes out and they do a quick sprint primary, or they do a run up to the convention and they have that. So I'm agreeing that Harris kind of got thrown to the wolves because I don't think Harris was ready. But at the same time, I think Biden, by doing that, actually backed the party into a corner, because at that point, if Biden comes out and says, and I think Harris, we need to rally behind Vice President Harris, she's going to beat Donald Trump, then of course, then if the party goes to Gavin Newsom or whatever, they're going to turn around and they're going to say, whoa, hold on, Gavin, you can't do this. You're going against the party. This is what President Biden has said. The machine came into play at that point as soon as Biden said that. Now, is that fair for Harris? I'm not. I think it was unfair for anybody in that situation. That said, I do think there is something to be said that Harris was very unpopular. However, I don't think Gavin Newsom is more popular across the United States. I'm not sure who is more popular on the Democrat side. And KJ, you and I have talked about this. The bench on the Democrat side, I think, is very thin. If Biden had, I'm sorry, let me rephrase, not a Freudian slip. If President Trump had been shot and killed before the announcement of Vance, which Vance had not been announced, I don't think the Republicans automatically turn around and say, well, Vance is the one to go to. And I think the Republicans are in just as big a disarray because their bench would have been just as unproven. So now you're going, do they, like, as Republicans, do we back Nikki Haley just because she was the only one still in the race at the end? She's the only one who was willing not to concede. We saw what that cost her. It cost her a place in the administration. So, Elton, it's not that I'm saying the Republicans have this super great bench. I'm saying both of them would have been incredibly. It would have been in an alternate universe where Biden steps down and doesn't endorse Harris, and Trump gets shot, and we say, who did we just vote for? That would have been a really, really interesting universe to live in.
Okay, let me ask you this question.
Sure.
Yep.
Say they did everything you said, and say they did it and took it to the convention and did all this and did all that, and they picked the candidate at the convention.
Mm-hmm.
How many days do you think that candidate would have had compared to how many Kamala had?
Would have lost what, 30 days? When was
the convention was in August?
Yeah, and he stepped down on July 21st.
Say that.
The article I just read. Well, let me rephrase. The article I just read says July 21st.
July 21st. So they'd have lost 20-some days or something. So they had about 70 days or so.
Yeah, so they would have had less time. So they had to scramble to make a decision.
Sure.
They took a vote. Nobody wanted it because the time was too short. So it fell back on Kamala. There was nobody dumb enough, no one dumb enough to take that. Nobody was dumb enough to do that. Because it would hurt their chances in the future. If you lose to Trump now, it would hurt your chance in the future. So they put somebody in there who was already vetted, who already had all the qualifications, who was vice president of the United States. She's vice president of the United States. It would make common sense for them to agree that she would be the likely choice.
I mean, they played poker, man. They played their best hand. It just didn't work out.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
And the
by
fact
that
that she was a woman, the fact that she was a woman going up against a misogynist man, the fact that she was multicultural, which right now that's what the United States looks like, they hedged their bet on that. And they figured they had a winner because you have this man over here who just says and does whatever he wants compared to this woman who is very smart, very intelligent, very astute. And they said, let's just gamble and see how it was going to play out. But they didn't expect it to play out the way it played out.
well, of course not.
yeah,
Of
they
course,
took
it didn't go the way that they thought. Right, and I agree. They thought it was going to be an Obama situation where it didn't matter who we put up as having a female of color was going to win no matter what because you have this old white guy and the
Yep.
miscalculation there. And I will say this though, there's a few other parts here. Hillary, like everybody in 2015, especially on the left, said Trump was the worst candidate ever. He's just ridiculous. The fact that the GOP is even considering him, and all the media and the left kind of pushed for Trump because they thought, oh, he'll be a pushover. And Trump was the worst candidate except for Hillary Clinton. Now,
I think
fast forward,
the Latino vote is what did it. I think because you're going to always have the black vote. The Democrats are always going to have the black vote. Always.
so
No matter how hard you look at it. Yes, they lost 4% of the black female vote. And
here's-
yes, they lost 20% of the black male vote. But large and behold, the Democrats and the black vote stays with them. I think they were counting on the Latino vote with all the rhetoric that he was talking to carry them over. Now, if they had got that, plus you're dealing with the Muslims, you're dealing with the Arab vote, the American Arab vote. You're also dealing with the Jewish vote. So she had a lot going against her. Number one, she had to walk a tightrope. And I think a lot of people don't understand that how you have a war going on in one country, and then in that one country, basically in the United States, that's two sets of voting blocks that you have to deal with. You got to try to pander to both at the same time to get votes. And somebody's not going to be happy. So you have to take the Latino vote into account. You have to take the Arab American vote into account. You have to take the Jewish vote into account. And the white women vote into account. All that counts. That's why a lot of these numbers don't tell the real story of how many people just stayed home and didn't vote. Because a lot of friends I know, a lot of people I know just stayed home and said to hell with the both of them.
So I'll say this: that's true of every election. Whoever turns out more people is going to win. Whoever has more. But one of the things with that is I haven't seen any breakdown on Muslim Americans, but I'm guessing it's a very small number. That said, the biggest Muslim populations are in Wisconsin and Michigan, which both went for Trump. Now, I understand that's the argument is because it's a female running, but the Jewish population is only like 3%. And I believe the Jewish population still went, I saw a number somewhere. I still think that the Jewish population went like 70% for Harris, something like that.
Yeah, they
so
did.
yeah, so
compared to 85 under Biden.
Well,
that's 15%.
It probably.
If you're in an election where every vote counts, percentages matter.
But every vote, but at the same time, it's about swing states, right? Because KJ and I've talked about this, how Hillary won by something like 6 million votes in the popular election, but that was between New York and Los Angeles, covered the vast majority of that. And I understand, but at the same time, I look at if you look at the voting, KJ, put that back up for a second, the breakdown of the black, white, Latino.
Yep. Let me go get it.
There's a point that I noticed that I think is really interesting here. And I think you and I spoke about this on chat. And it's that the Black community in America is right around 13%, and the Latino community is right around 18%.
Yep.
But according to exit polls of 120,000, only 10% of the vote was Black, and 10% of the Hispanic vote was Latino. So while that 13% down to 10% means about 70% of Black voters voted, the Latino vote means it went from 18% to 10%. That means only about 55 to 60% of Latinos voted. So I would actually argue that if Latinos turned out more, Trump's victory is even bigger. But if the candidate who is female and turned out, I believe women outvoted men 53 to 47, if I think is what it was.
Yeah, it was somewhere around there.
Right. So she turned. I think that, and the Democrats are going to have to go back and look at this, because this is where they have to do the soul searching and look at it. I don't know that Republicans necessarily were that much more energized, simply because if you look at 2016, Trump got 64 million. In 2020, he got 71 million, and this year he got 64 million. So it's fairly consistent. Where in 2020, it went 64 million, and this year it was 65 million.
This year he got 72 million votes.
Is that what it was? I know it was
72 million.
close, but it wasn't the 81 million from 2020. So something happened there with the
A lot of
popularity
people
of
stay.
turnout.
A lot of people stayed home. I'm telling you, that's what it is.
No, I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying is, then, at what point do you say that's on the candidate?
To be fair,
if they're not energized to come out for her.
Hold on. To be fair, 2020 was an anomaly because you were able to vote from home, mail-in ballots due to COVID.
Yeah, that too.
That made it extremely easy. So a lot of people who generally don't get involved were able to get involved.
And you also have to take into account of the new voting laws in some of these states that changed.
Like in Georgia?
You have to take that into account as well.
Well, I mean, they did. I mean, they did do the.
Yeah, they did some work. They did some work on them votes.
The red team did go to work.
They did some work.
But
they definitely did some work.
So I've heard that argument too. Hold on for a second, because I've heard that argument. I'll say for Georgia, because that's where I live, right? When Georgia was changing their voter laws, and people were freaking out, oh, they're going to steal the vote. They actually made it easier to go vote because they extended the amount of time you could go vote. They did a lot of things that were very positive, but the press was preemptively freaking out. So again, I look at a lot of this and I go, there are reasons behind everything. And ultimately, to me, and this is only my analysis, I think if you have a very unpopular candidate who, vice president or not, 100 days, 80 days, 120 days, 70 days, I'd be flabbergasted if somebody that has as low popularity as Harris did as VP before she was nominated as by the Democrats to put her in there. I would have been incredibly surprised for her to win. That said, I don't think she's somebody that is going to come back from this. I think she is going to laugh all the way to the bank. I think she's going to write a book or 2 or 3. I think she is going to get a $100,000 to $250,000 every speaking engagement for the next few years. She's going to laugh all the way to the bank.
Yep. And that's why she did it. That's why she did it. Because at the end of the day, there is no downfall for running for president.
Well, I don't see any reason. The only reason she wouldn't have run is, I don't know if there is a reason she wouldn't.
There's no reason she wouldn't have run.
Right.
She would have ran.
Yeah.
She would have run. Because at the end of the day, you talking about unpopular. In the last election, 81 million people voted against Donald Trump. 81 million. So that's as unpopular as you're going to get. Now,
Elton, let me ask you a question about that. That's a great point. But let me ask you, do you think 81 million people didn't, if the idea is 81 million people were so energized to go out and vote against Donald Trump, then why, and I get there's mail-in ballots, but to me it seems like part of the problem might also have been that people weren't turning out to vote for somebody. And I think a lot of people did see Joe Biden in 2020 for all his warts, and there were many of them. They still had this idea of, oh, he's just old Joe. Oh, old Uncle Joe. And I just don't think Harris had the likability. I think Biden
look at the country we live in. Likability?
Well,
look at the country. Anybody would see an old white man like Joe Biden and be like, oh, that's just old Uncle Joe. Yeah, we're going to support him after what we had been through about drinking bleach and all that other stuff. Of course they were going to come out for Uncle Joe. Of course they were. But then you have a candidate who basically represents this country. I mean, every facet of this country was represented in her. And people were just like, well, I don't know nothing about her, so I don't know. She look a little shifty-eyed. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's blatantly ridiculous. It's a double standard. Here we have a man who, and Joe Biden, who was known and well known to everyone, who had ran multiple campaigns before. People knew who he was. He was Barack Obama's vice president. So people was like, hell yeah, we're going to vote for him. But then you have Kamala Harris come in, somebody who a lot of people didn't know very well. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I know she was well known in the HBCU community when she was touting abortion rights in the HBCU community. Before she started running for president, she was well known in those communities. This country will not elect a black woman as president. This country probably won't elect any woman as president at the end of the day. Why? Because I don't know. I guess people are just going to be, people don't like change. They don't believe in it.
Couple of things before we move on. We gotta treat 2020 as the anomaly it was, right? I think the Democrats made a fatal flaw by assuming that the numbers for 2020 were going to show up in 2024, when traditionally those are not the numbers that show up for elections, right?
I believe Biden did. That's why he wouldn't step down.
Right. So the numbers that we saw in 2024 are more in line with 2016, 2012, 2020, 2008, 2004, right? 2020 was an anomaly. So the numbers that they were expecting to turn out weren't there because those people weren't there. The only reason those people voted was because you literally had nothing else to do because you were locked in the house. And that is why we cannot, it was too many factors to overcome to cut. And, and you just keep, she's already fighting from underneath. And you throw in, I got 100 days, and you throw in, I'm already, they don't like me. They don't know me. I don't have the reps. You know what I'm saying? It was a doomed candidacy from the beginning. It's not that she's a bad candidate. She's just a bad candidate at the wrong time.
Let me ask you a question about that then. If the 100 days was the hang up, where's the point where time is no longer an issue? So, and maybe that's not an answerable question.
I believe if she got full time, if she had just as much time, because you got to understand, we've been seeing Donald Trump for 12 years straight, and even before that. But in the news cycle, we've been seeing him arguably for 12 years straight. If she had the same amount of time he had, I think people would have came out more. I think people would have known more. And if they would explain their situation a little bit better, he went on TV and called her a bitch on national television. Excuse my language. But had she went out and said the same thing about him, maybe people would have came out more. Maybe people would say, "Oh yeah, she's a fighter, she's a scrapper."
Yeah.
But you don't know what people think. You
Well,
never know.
Not necessarily, and I'll explain why. Because Hillary Clinton was known, and people didn't show up for her. But the issue is the issue with Harris and her candidacy was it wasn't just she could have overcame any of those issues had they been a singular issue. But what you had was a series of compounding issues that just became insurmountable over time, right? Had you had a full election cycle with Harris as a candidate, she would have saw the issues she had with black men voters, and she would have released that black economic plan earlier. She would have gotten a chance to get those debate reps in. Because she would have gone through that primary. So a lot of those fumbles that she had, that she stumbled into those 100 days, she would have been able to work those kinks out. So
yeah, and not by her own accord.
Within that condensed election time frame, it was just a series of unfortunate events that she just could not overcome in such a condensed time with her being unprepared. Like I said, you're running against a seasoned candidate who's been there, done that, and know what it takes to win, going against an unprepared candidate who's never been in the limelight before.
So do you think it helped her argument to go on these shows and say things like, well, Trump's been running for 10 years, when she was asked about her campaign and well, Trump is I read one that I thought was a really interesting analysis, and I'm curious what you guys think about this. I was in a high school subbing, and it was about the marketing and this, and so I was asking them about on the marketing side, and the article I read said there's a point where if you call Donald Trump a Nazi a gazillion times, why do you think that calling him a Nazi a gazillion and one time is going to change anything? And so the question becomes, and I think there is something to be said for this, is when you have the Harris campaign and Vice President Harris, who constantly say, Trump is a Nazi, Trump is a Nazi, Trump is a Nazi, Trump is a Nazi. When she starts to say Trump and people shut down, yeah, we know he's a Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
Even if she has something valuable to say, or even if she is going to make a different point or something along, or not just her, but the Democratic Party.
Right.
I wonder how much they actually unintentionally trained people, especially who were undecided, to go, we get it, he's a Nazi. Oh my gosh, I can't listen to this anymore.
I mean, I never really heard her call him a Nazi.
Hold on, E. But see, that
Really?
works. That works. Hold on.
I mean, a fascist, yeah, but not a Nazi.
Guys, hold on. That works in the inverse, right? Because just like they've heard it so much that they're able to tune her out. Had Harris had a full election cycle, some of those threats and stuff that Trump was able to throw out to her would have also fallen on deaf ears. But because it was only a 100-day cycle, those threats kept hitting her fresh. So they kept stinging, right?
What do you mean by threats?
So when
I'd like to. What are the repetitive ones?
So when Trump will come out and be like, oh well, she's dumb, or oh well, she's incompetent. Well, with the full election cycle, she'd been able to defend herself, and she'd been able to combat that better, right? But when you only have 100 days, you got to pick your fights, right? And she wasn't able to defend all of that. So what you hear in 100-day blitz.
How hard is it to defend? I'm not retarded.
Easy, right? You say that, right? Well, I'll give you a hint, right? Us three sitting here, right? We can defend it fairly easy. But when I'm talking to a population who they already have a negative idea who I am initially, right? So I'm already having to fight hard to change your mind. You already have a negative opinion of me based off of how the economy's run, right? So I'm already fighting against that. Two, I have these guys bombarding you with a bunch of false information about what things that I have to going on, right? Like, so one of the ads that was pretty prominent, right? Were Kamala's war on Israel, or Kamala's economy, or Kamala's this, that, and the other. we all know that the vice president doesn't have any executive power, right? She's the president of the Senate, but she didn't vote for any of that funding to go over.
We know it, but a lot of people don't know it.
She only votes when in case of a tie, right? But with 100 days, I don't have time to explain it to you. I have to assume that you're smart enough to know that that's not my responsibility.
But at the same time, the what was it called? The Recovery Act, the Inflation Recovery Act,
Right.
She voted for the tiebreaker, and I think most economists have been pretty clear about that did increase inflation, despite its name. But
But you're right though. That did increase inflation. But what you have in the full election cycle is I'm able to explain the effects. Yeah, that also increased inflation. But you know what else increased inflation? Adding $78 trillion to the damn budget before I got here.
I wish somebody would have explained.
But see, that's
the reason why we had an inflationary period.
That's what I'm saying, Elton.
It wasn't because Joe Biden put us into inflation.
But see,
let's not sit here and act like we don't know why we got into inflation in the first place.
But you don't have that opportunity in a condensed election cycle to put those nuances out. Like one thing that I liked about the Obama campaign, right? And one thing I thought that was another that, and I don't know why she didn't lean into the advisors of the Obama campaign to help her. You know, it baffles me. The first thing the Obama campaign did when he won the nomination is he put up a Defeat the Truth website, right? So whenever they were run a negative campaign about the Obamas, they immediately will put that campaign, they will put that ad on the website and debunk it immediately. So anybody who had any questions about whether his birth certificate was invalid, any other bullshit that was out there, could go to that website and validate whether it was true or not. Kamala Harris chose not to address these issues for whatever reason. She chose not to address them, and that was a way. You know, hindsight being what it was, I probably wouldn't have done that. But I don't get paid to make those decisions. But what I'm saying is, with a full election cycle, you have enough time to adjust your strategy to make those mistakes. In 100 days, you don't have a lot of room for error. So she's not able to make those mistakes and learn and grow, right? So it's just a series again, and I don't know how to keep stressing it. It's a series of unfortunate events that you have with an unprepared candidate that was put in a bad position. There's nothing more or less to say. And then, you know, you're counting on phantom votes, man. They're not. 80 million people aren't going to come out to vote in the U.S. election. They're not. You're lucky if you get 60. You're lucky if you get 60. I think we're averaging 58, between 58 and 62 on a good election cycle.
It's funny to me how elections were never known for disinformation, and were never known for scandal. They was very rare that something like that happened until recently.
Oh no, man! The U.S. election.
No, I mean, listen to what I'm saying. I said it was very rare, very rare. Like it doesn't get as much play. It didn't get as much play back then as it does now.
Well, for obvious reasons, though. I mean, you're talking about the difference between having 3 shows, NBC, CBS, and ABC, and that's it, with the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, Chicago Tribune.
But a lot of that stuff is also disinformation. We can't sit here and act like that. You know, disinformation didn't run rampant in these elections. A lot of disinformation ran rampant.
Wait, are we talking about current or historical though?
No, we're talking about current.
So I'm saying that's the problem. You said, why didn't they get more play? Because again, KJ and I have talked about this in the 1960 election, which was absolutely stolen from Nixon, and pretty provably. I mean, it's been proven that that's what happened. So you've had this type of
Kennedys.
Well, but I mean, you go back even further. You look at not Truman. Oh my gosh, Roosevelt.
Oh,
I mean,
FDR.
they
FDR.
stole one. We stole one. You know, you got
No. But
Bush
what I'm
and I
saying
mean,
is, so
you got
FDR,
Bush in the 2000s. I mean, it's the same difference.
FDR lied about having polio. He would very specifically not be taken with any pictures with him not standing up. He'd have his leg braces and they'd attach it. So health concern. Um, so I don't think there's any part of the campaign is to get people to vote for you no matter what you believe. If you're going to say, well, Harris was being truthful with everything she said, shenanigans, any more than Trump. They're both going to say whatever they need to say to get elected. And then you can only hope that the best of checks and balances like tones down the worst impulses of both powers. I've said for a long time, the best thing that happened for the Clinton White House and the reason he was reelected in 1996 was because Gingrich and the Republicans won in 94 with the Contract for America, because what that did was it now limited what could go through, and only the good ideas came through that both the Republicans and the Democrats could get behind. So for Clinton, that was actually a great thing, because I don't think that after the debacle the first 2 years with Hillary being put in charge of potentially nationalizing healthcare, and let alone Clinton's peccadillos, that was a really good thing for him. Unfortunately, we are in for all intents and purposes, I think we're in a post bipartisan world. You just don't have enough people in Congress that will reach across the aisle, and the very, very few that might get turned around on both sides and told, well, we're gonna primary you and we're gonna vote you out. And somebody like Manchin goes, I'll beat you to it, I'm out. So yeah, it's very difficult. And that's why I hope, and I understand the idea as well. We're past the idea of intellectuals or intelligent people running for Congress. But at the same time, KJ and I, it's funny, we can sit and we can just have a conversation. We can say, this is what we think, and this is our ideas, and here's the research we've done and the ideas. And we still have people in the comments saying, oh, great, two more know nothings spewing their opinions. It's the funniest thing, because I read that one, the KJ sent me, and I was like, my first thought was Obi-Wan Kenobi is like, who's the more foolish? The foolish man or the men who follow him? Whatever the quote is. It's like, so we're two idiots who know nothing, but you're sitting here watching what we're putting out. So are we the idiots or are you? I don't know. So it's going to be really interesting to see what Trump does if he surrounds himself with people that are smart, that are driven. I tell you what, I hope for everything, if nothing else comes out of it, I hope Trump names Elon to, what are they calling it? It was DOGE, Department of.
It's the regulatory committee.
But what the idea is to create, though, something that against fraud, waste, and abuse, right? To try to cut down on waste. Do I think
So
it's
you
going to
want
happen?
Elon in charge of wasteful spending?
My point is, I don't think it's going to happen regardless.
No, you
I
said
would
you
love
hope.
for the federal government to stop waste and abuse, fraud, waste, and abuse. I just don't trust it's going to happen. Whether it's Elon, when I say I want Elon to be in charge of it, I want somebody to actually be in charge of cutting fraud, waste. I think the federal government wastes a huge amount of money. That said, it all comes down to perception. I have a friend who wrote, we are the only country, we're the richest country on earth, and we don't take care of our poor. And it's like, are you kidding? We spend $4 to $5 trillion on Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and I understand they pay into Social Security and welfare and all this. Like, the vast majority of money goes into entitlement spending.
We don't take care of our poor, though. I mean, that's I mean, you still have people
How
living
much
on the
more do you want to
street.
spend on it?
You still have people. Look. You still have people living on the street at the end of the day. Like that's not taking care of the poor.
That's not
Like,
necessarily true either.
The vast majority of people that are living on the street have mental health issues.
No.
They're on the
The
street.
vast majority.
no, the vast
Wait,
majority of
wait,
people living on the street don't always have mental health issues.
Wait. The vast majority of our supplemental spending goes to subsidies, but it's not going to like programs like welfare.
It's not.
It's going to other government subsidies.
Exactly. It's not.
It's
People
going
think it is, but it's
going to
really not.
It's going to subsidies, but it's not like, you know.
Compared to what they spend on other things.
Hold on. I'm gonna pull up the data so we can make sure.
Yeah, compared to what they spend on other things in this government, I'm sure a couple of $1 trillion ain't gonna hurt, or a couple of $1 billion ain't gonna hurt. We spend a lot more on a lot of other unnecessary things than just trying to take care of the poor and trying to deal with social issues and mental health issues and things of that nature.
The National Library of Medicine says that the mean prevalence of any current mental disorder of people that are living on the street is 76.2%. That's 3/4 of people that are living on the street have a mental disorder. Does that not qualify as most? Now, as far as spending, hey, I'd be really curious what qualifies as spending on poor. I think that, again, like KJ and I were saying earlier, I think that the government has done a very poor job of forcing neighbors and community and church out of helping the poor and out of taking care of each other.
All right. So just so we're aware, and this is
you
just
zoom in on that. I can't see.
Yeah, I got you. This
I
is
can't see that.
I got you. I'm gonna have to cut it loose. I'll read it to you guys. So this is from fiscaldata.treasury.gov. I'll cut the link and post it so you guys can see it. And then I'll read it to you. So 22% of the fiscal budget goes to Social Security, which is not a subsidy. It's an entitlement that we pay into, and they're just giving us our money back. 14% goes into health, 13% goes into net interest, 13% goes into Medicare, 13% also goes into national defense, 10% goes into income security, and then the rest of it is 5% veteran benefits and services, 5% for education, training, employment, and social services, which would be your welfare programs, 2% transportation, 1% community and regional development, and 3% other.
Can you read that last one again about
what's that?
Social services? Social what did you say? 5%?
5%. That's all the way.
I mean, that's a drop in the bucket. That's a drop in the bucket. That's nothing. 5% of our GDP. That's nothing.
Budget S.
This isn't GDP. This is.
I mean, yeah, the budget. I'm sorry, the budget.
Yes,
That's nothing.
$5 trillion. 5% is $250 billion.
That's nothing compared to what we spent on COVID. That's nothing. Nothing.
Why are we comparing that to COVID?
I'm just saying, compared to what we spent on just COVID alone, that's nothing.
What did we spend on COVID? On developing? I'm curious. I'm not following what you're saying about on COVID. What did we spend? When you say spend it on COVID, what are you saying?
I'm talking about as far as the checks go to give everybody money, and as far as research and development and vaccines, that's nothing. That's a drop in the bucket.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll agree with you that giving the money that they gave to COVID was ridiculous, considering most people got a $750 check, and you had corporations and these very large organizations getting the vast majority of that, and the $750, the American people were going, cool, $750.
So you think that giving the money to corporate America was wrong, and it should have went more to normal people, correct?
Absolutely. I'm against corporate subsidies.
And who did you vote for again?
Nobody. My ballot.
He didn't get a chance to vote.
But Harris was.
Who would you have voted
better
for?
on that.
Who would you have voted for?
I would have voted for Trump, but Harris isn't any better on that.
I mean,
you're talking about two sides of the coin on this point.
No, I'm not. Like, look, you got to understand. Who does corporate tax cuts help? Who do they help? Do they help?
Stockholders? Yeah, corporations and stockholders. Absolutely.
Yeah, but do they help the regular people? Do they help poor people? Do they help middle class people? Do they help anybody of any sort?
So there is an argument to be made that is one way that the government uses to keep prices down. Now, that said, I don't necessarily subscribe to that argument, but that's also why I say we should have a flat tax.
That's what I'm saying to you when I say
you go back through and the ones that you would consider, what's the word we're even using? Not for poor people, but Medicare, Medicaid. The thing, social services, what were those percentages again?
Very, very low. Hold on. So
and another thing, I don't think people should go bankrupt paying for medical bills. I don't think that should be a thing.
Social services is 5%, health is 14%, and Social Security is at the top. Social Security.
We're not counting Social Security, right? Because you pay.
No. Yeah, we're not.
So go from the top and just flow so I can add it up in my head.
Yep. So without counting Social Security, you got health at 14%.
Okay.
Next is net interest at 13%.
Yeah.
Then you have Medicare at 13%.
Okay, that's 27%.
National defense at 13%.
No.
Income security at 10%.
What's income security?
It doesn't have it broke down. It just says income security.
That's the FDI, FDI. You know, the people who insure money if something happens to the bank.
They're paying 10% of everything to just insurance for the bank.
For every bank in every part of the United States, you have to insure every federal bank has to be insured.
They do have to hold a reserve.
Yeah. But, it's just the reserve.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. What's the next one?
Then you got 5% to the VA.
Earned.
5% for education, training, employment, and social services. 2% to transportation. 1% for community and regional development, and then 3% for other.
So somewhere around 30% goes into helping support people. Is that close? Medicare, Medicaid, services. So here, okay. So I mean, I'd have to see a full breakdown, but there's certain things that I think we're stupid about as a government. For example, transportation, right? I'd be fine with a 50-cent per gallon federal tax across the board on every gallon of gas if that money went towards roads and bridges and train, rail, the stuff that actually, you use with your car. The problem with the federal government is we don't do things like that. I think that the federal defense, the national defense, people will argue and say, well, federal defense is too much, 13%. Well, they don't take into account the vast majority of that is actually for the benefits and the money that goes to soldiers and sailors and Marines, their paychecks.
That should be a different category altogether.
Yeah, it really should, because that's the only thing that, along with the post office, are the only ones that are actually guaranteed by the Constitution. But there's also that argument of, okay, do we put that much money into research and development for the military? Because if you drop one Hellfire missile that costs $220,000, would you rather have that one Hellfire missile be launched, or would you rather have 100 Marines that are on the ground going in and trying to kill an enemy combatant? So for soldiers, we love that $225 million or $225,000 Hellfire, and we love $18 million Apaches and $60 million tanks and $220 million airplanes as long as we don't have to go in and knock door to door. So again, yeah, I agree. That's a little bit different.
I believe healthcare and education should be the most important two things on that list. Education and healthcare. Because if you educated more people would have better opportunities. And if you put in more in healthcare, then people would understand and have the knowledge of what it takes to live better and be better. I also think that food deserts shouldn't exist. I think that when you pay $12 a pound for organic grapes, like I do, I think that people who don't live in that plateau should not be able to just get cheap grapes for health. I think that the reason why health costs are so ridiculous is because you have lobbyists pandering to congressmen and senators about health. And I think that if it was a more centralized system, it could get better. Now, I live in Harford County in Maryland, and they had 2 hospitals in the county. Now we only have 1. And the wait times were long with 2. Now, I remember about 2 months ago, I had surgery on my appendix. I waited 17 hours to be seen. And I think that is ridiculous for the kind of country that we live in to deal with issues like this. People can complain about healthcare costs, but nobody wants to do anything about it to change it. People want to complain about people being on welfare when everyone knows that the Midwest and the South accounts for more healthcare than any other part of the United States. Usually in Republican swing Republican swing states. Mm-hmm. So for that reason and that reason alone, I don't think that people should be talking about social issues as far as food stamp benefits and what people need, because I know people right now who are on food stamps who work full-time jobs because their jobs are just enough to pay their bills and they can't eat or they can't buy their medication. And the fact of the matter is that we have elected a man who will not only cut these programs, but will make the situation even worse than what it already is. And to sit here and to try to understand or try to somehow rationalize this is unheard of. It's crazy to me. The numbers don't lie.
So
if he's going to do what he says he's going to do, which is kind of like, okay, whatever. He's going to do it. He's going to do it. All it's going to hurt is the people who we sitting here talking about right now who need the most help.
Who's been in charge the last 4 years? Who's been in charge the last 4 years?
Joe Biden's been in charge the last 4 years.
Okay. So Trump coming in is magically going to make everything his problem, and it's going to be his fault.
Well, they magically made the economy Joe Biden's fault.
So it wasn't just the economy; it was inflation, and we talked about that. But
that's what I'm saying. They magically made it Biden's fault. When I did my homework, by the way, it takes almost 3.5 years for all of these new things to take effect.
I think it's closer 6 to 7 years, personally.
No, it takes 3.5 years. I read it. It takes 3.5 years for the whole cycle to go through the United States economy to change the numbers. So
by that argument, then the middle of you just said that Biden's economy was really good. Well, by that argument, that's the end of Trump's. Would be Biden.
I never said Biden's economy was good in the beginning. I said Biden's economy is getting better now. His economy in the beginning was trash.
Well,
It was trash.
you also did have that whole COVID thing going on. That's it. Okay.
Exactly. So it was trash in the beginning because it was so much money that had to get paid out to people because they were literally paying people to stay home. So you have to take that into account, which nobody really did. They just said, "Oh, my economy was better," blah blah blah. But you have to take into account of everything that happened, which nobody did. No one did. All they said was, "Oh, well, I got it better under Trump. I got it better under Trump." Well, yeah, you got 3 years better under Trump because while he was playing golf, it was still Barack Obama's policies, economic policies, that were still taking shape.
Okay.
And that's just a fact.
That's an opinion.
It's not an opinion, it's a fact. It's a fact.
It's an opinion.
Okay, well, it's my opinion that I believe, and a lot of economists believe as well. So.
And that's fine. Some may, and that's fine. But here's part of the problem is, as a campaign, it is your job to convince the people that are voting to buy into what you're selling.
When you got 100 days?
You've been in office for 4 years. You don't think that Biden, before he came up, when he's been...
The bloviated argument. That is a straight up bloviated argument. It is. Because at the end of the day, what did Mike Pence do?
You know what? It's my show. I get to bloviate if I want.
I'll let you sit there. I will let you sit there and tell me what did Mike Pence do.
Doesn't get to say I get to bloviate. He's the only one who can shut me down.
Michael Pence did absolutely nothing. Nothing.
I agree. And
so so you expect Kamala Harris. Oh, what? And y'all use these same talking points like, well, what did Harris do? What can she do? She wasn't the president. What could she have done? Like, what did Mike Pence do? Absolutely nothing. And so that argument
ran for president when?
What?
When did Pence run for president?
2020.
No, he did. I thought that was Trump.
No, he ran for president in 2020. He was on the ballot in he was on the he was in the primaries in 2020. He was. Look it up. Mike Pence was a Republican. Mike Pence was a Republican candidate for president in 2020. Yes, he was. Look it up. Google it. I'm here all day.
In 2020.
All right. This is gonna be the last. This is gonna be the last one between y'all. Then we got to wrap it up. It is getting late.
2020. Mike Pence ran for president,
and then he dropped out like almost immediately. Is that what it was?
Yeah, but he still ran. He still ran.
And did he get anywhere near the presidency or become the nominee?
It was 2024.
That's because Donald Trump won.
Oh, it was 2024 because he was on the ticket in 2020 with Trump because he was the vice presidential candidate.
No, I mean after the what was the election that Biden won 2016, right? No, 2020, right?
20, yeah.
Yeah, so it was the 2020 election.
Nope, 2024. He was on the presidential ticket for POTUS.
Okay, well it was 2024. But still, he ran.
All right.
He ran. He ran.
All right, my brother. We are getting ready to do final thoughts. It is 2:15. We are way over time, man. I appreciate you jumping on, good brother. As always, appreciate you coming by.
Hey, man. Hey, look, man. Look, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I just hope that all these things that he said he was going to do, I mean, he did. He said he was going to build a wall. He didn't build a wall. So I just hope at the end of the day, all these things that he said he's going to do, he's going to do.
All right.
That's all.
My other Pogue lost his headphones, man. So I got to close out on my own. Yeah. Well, I mean, we gonna see, good brother. Life is, man. We can't do nothing but get ourselves. I think I got kicked out of my own studio. How crazy is that? All right, so I'm back, and I'll close this thing out. I want to give thanks to Elton for coming on. brother, it's always a pleasure having you on, man. I appreciate the discussion. I lost my other Pogue. I think his headphones died out, man. So on behalf of him and I, we want to thank you guys for tuning in. And I know, right? What a way to close out, man. We're back. It died out on us, man. These technical glitches are a monster, man. I'm starting to think we got gremlins in our system. So so listen, man. Thank you guys so very much for the robust conversation. We'll get this live in our social feeds this week. Please comment, like, comment, share as always, man. We'll see you guys same bat time, same bat channel next week. And we'll get ready to ride this wave, man. We'll ride it together one day at a time. That's all we got. All right, my brother Thad. What's up, man? Hey, man, we got to get you back on the show, Thad. We got to get you back on the show, brother, so we can hear your thoughts, man. One day at a time, man. Thank you guys so very much for coming on. On behalf of myself and Lance, man, we appreciate y'all. We'll see you boys later. Take care.
Gee, Ray, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
All right, yo, let's get into it.
Try to take over the world.
Reaching freedom
Try to take over the world.
And greatest chaplain in the world, Mr.
Try
Lance
to
O'Neill.
take over the world.